You want to like wait a minute, see if anyone else wants to pull up to this?
Yeah, we can wait.
Okay.
I'll just make my stance clear then. My stance is just that abortion is moral. So.
Stance that it's immoral. Okay.
Yeah. Now I have like 3 forks. So like I guess you can call it 3 arguments in favor of it. And depending on how it goes, we'll just go through them. But you can also start off with like an opening statement if you want, because I'm going to be eating my my noodles for a little bit.
No, you're good. Yeah, I guess my stance is I do not think that it is immoral in all circumstances. That's not what I would argue for at all. Or sorry, not immoral. Moral in all circumstances. My stance isn't pretty much like up until the day it's born, you can fucking kill it. I'm not like one of those weirdos that are extreme on the left that say, well, you can kill it until it's 2 years old. Like it's nothing like that. It's nothing extreme. Actually, a really conservative pro-choice stance. You want to like wait a minute, see if anyone else wants to pull up. I think there are instances in which it is
we can wait.
Justifiable to have an abortion. It's essentially like the long and short of it.
Okay. For all 3 arguments, they all argue that abortion is moral at conception. And this is just excluding hard cases with when like the mother's life is in danger, the baby's life is in danger, rape, incest. It's just the majority of cases that abortions take place. So just consensual sex between 2 parties that are willing and knowing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I guess like the difference here would be, at least in my position, would be like, I don't think that it's more, like I said, throughout the whole pregnancy, but I personally just don't see any reason to necessarily grant it personhood at conception. Personhood in this case being the bare minimum, which I think is pretty fair to say with how we treat like non-human things that are like living things. The bare minimum of personhood seems to be, I'm not going to kill you at my convenience. Like,
yeah,
that's a common thing.
So just like the non-aggression principle. So you would agree if they had personhood, they wouldn't be justified in killing the fetus. And we can talk about what like constitutes personhood, but
yeah, if they're just something that doesn't have personhood, like I don't see a reason to buy that principle for it. Like I don't feel that way about like a fucking book,
Mm. Okay, well, I'm almost done with my noodles, but I think we should just start off the debate by defining personhood because it's just going to go back to that. So,
well, I mean, I guess my view on it is that it is a sliding scale, and it just denotes like what level, if any, of moral consideration something gets. It's really what my view on it. Because I mean, if you don't fall on that, like, or like a thing in reality doesn't fall on the spectrum of personhood anywhere, then I mean, then it gets no moral consideration, like a book, like just a random book.
Yeah, I agree. Just like non-conscious physical things like books, rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and even then, like probably a lot of plants, like fungi.
Plants, I'm not too well into plants, but yeah. I don't know if there's like some weird set of plants that people argue has like consciousness or something. But that sounds fine. Like grass and leaves and stuff like that.
No one respected argues that they have consciousness like an animal. Like no one says it's an animal like conscious or anything like that. Like,
okay. My thing for personhood would just be something akin to an essence of a person. I just find all the other arguments for reasons why we care about people to be bad arguments. So stuff like consciousness, intelligence, et cetera, lead to unintuitive conclusions that would be unsavory for most people if they acted it out. So we can talk about that. But I'm sure you disagree with some stuff. Like someone's in a coma, you don't know if they're going to wake up and they're not conscious. You're not justified in killing them. And same for people who don't want to live. So like, even if someone was suicidal, you wouldn't be justified in shooting them in the face and stuff like that. So, I
mean, not necessarily. I mean, the moral system that because I don't have like I don't have some like PhD thesis like paper to drop about like my moral system or anything like that. It's just mostly something I've been trying to piece together over the past like year and some change. So like I'm not certain about a few things that you said, whether they even factor in to what I'm saying. Just because something like a conclusion may appear unintuitive does not necessarily mean that it's like bad or like this is bad reasoning or it's a bad
Yeah, that's
conclusion.
fine.
It necessarily
I would
has to
just
be bad.
establish some standard that if some thing goes against our strong intuitions, there has to be rationale for it to be the case. So like once we have an intuition to rape, we can rationalize and say rape is immoral because it goes against bodily autonomy or something, right? So for those instances, we just have to offer some rational explanation for why our intuitions are wrong.
Yeah, and my objective here and my claim isn't like necessarily saying that there's no conceivable valid conceivable argument which supports like pro pro life. My stance is like essentially what I'm aiming to do here is just show I can provide a consistent like a self-consistent system, i.e. a valid system, which does allow for abortions to a certain point. Again, I'm not hard pro choice. You won't hear me
Mm.
saying like some extreme lefty shit. Like
Yeah, like how they be. Well, I don't know. From the data I saw like a while ago in some ethics class I took, most abortions is in like the first trimester. So I don't know how many lefties like are pro third trimester or second trimester abortion. Probably a few, but not many.
you would you would be surprised how many just seem to like congregate on the app. Like
Yeah, definitely. You're going to see them a lot more, like observation bias or whatever. The most radical people are going to be seen by the most people. So.
I think
But
like certain aspects of the community, like because even if you were in a bigger community, I mean, this isn't super relevant, but I'm just saying, like VC debates do tend to VC debaters rather in communities that have a lot of them do seem to select for certain traits and the readiness and willingness to bite crazy fucking bullets seems to be something that's positively selected for here. Like
yeah, that's kind of why I was establishing the intuition thing. So intuition thing kind of goes against biting the bullet in ethics debate and just turning it into a consistency argument, which devolves into like meta ethics. So like I'm pretty sure 99% of people when they talk to each other share moral axioms, but debaters are like weird on Discord and just argue about bullshit.
my thing
Yeah.
is like even though I think there are some things which may be unintuitive to a lot of people, I don't think it's not like I don't think it's justifying anything wild like fucking omniscient like that. Like you know what I mean? Like I don't think it. I think it's actually one that a lot of people, at least the people that I've shared it with, seem to empathize a lot with and seem to recognize that it's not like coming from a place of maliciousness or like a lack of care. It's literally just like a differing view descriptively of how certain traits seem to work. At least that's what I seem to encounter. But
Yeah, that's true. There is some like relativism for intuitions, but you like for stuff like abortion though, when it gets down to the fun like just life and death, most places across the world just kind of agree, it's bad to kill people that haven't done anything to you. So
um
but
yeah, whatever a society defines as like people, yeah. I'm generally speaking, yeah.
yeah. I know obviously we're just gonna get into distinctions of whether or not, it's a clump of cells or it's a person or whatever. But also
Mhm.
for the thing you said prior about taking some like I think you're saying you're not taking like some certainty stance or whatever, that's fine as well. I just take it to be that anytime we argue, unless specified, we just mean probably for our claims. So
Well, I'll do my best just to clarify regardless. Like even in cases like this, not to say that you necessarily are, but it's just become habit after doing it for so long. I try to be as like autistic as I can in a lot of these debates just so it's like no, I did not say this or mean this. I made it clear it was this, so
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, these little
yeah,
fucking
even
rats.
yeah, it's a little redundant, but like it's just a fucking habit at this point. Like
Mhm.
but yeah, but yeah, essentially that's just my point. I don't think that it has personhood at all stages of development. Like, and I
Yeah.
think that I have a fairly consistent view of the world.
Okay.
Um,
Let me go put away my plate, and then we can get into the debate. So
Yeah, that's fine. Most action-packed debate in the server's history, guys. Let's go. Really doing numbers on this one. God, I wish Discord stages had like a super chat function. That'd be fucking awesome. Pay me. I'll answer your questions.
okay, I'm back. You can start off with your position, and then I'll give like a debrief of my 3 things really quickly, and then we can go into like personhood or whatever.
Well, I mean, I feel like I kind of summed it up already. If you just want to give your reasoning.
No, you're just like agnostic on the. Oh wait, did you give it when I left? Like right now?
Oh, I mean, like no. Just when we were talking, I kind of like, albeit
Okay.
it was not really like.
No, I get the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like essentially, yeah. No, I just don't. Basically, if it gets personhood, won't kill you at my convenience. And then,
Okay.
Yeah.
So my 3 things. So I have an ontological argument, a cautionary argument, and a future argument, you could say. So the ontological argument just goes like this: non-physical things cannot constitute physical things, and vice versa. So no amounts of nutrients given in the uterus of a mother during the stages of pregnancy would institute some would make the what's it called? Make the fetus go from a non mental state to a mental state, given the fact that there is no like additive properties other than nutrients, space to grow, oxygen, stuff like that. And then my second argument would be the cautionary argument. So if it is the case that you are agnostic on these claims and you don't know whether or not a fetus has something called, I'll just say like a soul and mental state, it would be similar to like demolishing a building, where you would have to first clear the building and see no people are inside the building to demolish it to be morally justified in destroying it, because of the potential harm it could cause. So if it is the case we don't know whether or not people are alive at conception or life begins at conception, then until our understanding of science increases, it's completely plausible that we could be committing something called like a baby holocaust. And then the third one would be the potential argument. So this one I'm going to have to go a little bit more in depth, but it's just the fact that
if you do want to hold on to that one till later, not to just like
okay, that's fine.
I'll like cut you off, then we can hold off on that one. We could just go on the first one, which I'm not quite sure I understand. Could you just like run that back by me? Like the second one just seems like something similar that I've heard before, just structurally like Pascal's wager. We can address that later, but the first one, like just run me through that again. Like hold my hand through it. How about that?
Yeah, so the ontological argument just goes like this. There's this field of study called what is it? It's like genogenesis. It's just the study of growth, so getting a fertilized egg and then growing it through synthetic systems, so like machines that supply energy, oxygen, hormone control, et cetera, that would allow the fetus to grow into an adult, or into a baby, I mean. And the point of this is to demonstrate that no amount of energy, like effectively just energy, inputting energy into a non-living thing or a non a mental thing would create a mental thing. So you can take like a rock, for example, a piece of wood, water. You can pump all the energy you want into those things, and nothing non-physical will ever come out of two physical processes. So the argument just goes at conception, there's necessarily some sort of non-physical essence when the sperm fertilizes the egg, and that is there. So that's like the argument.
Seems to rely off of a couple of things. It does, but it seems to rely mostly off of the idea that like a mind is completely immaterial.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
I
you can
don't
get
think
into
that that
that.
necessarily factors into my view, anyways, because my view is mostly just going on to describe like functional things. It doesn't need to contend with those. In that sense, like the mind could be physical or it could be material, and I don't think that really matters to the stance that I would hold and the way that I would justify things. But then beyond that as well, it also seems to ignore, even because I don't think that functionally describing like even the brain and its impacts on the mind necessarily debunks. I think Michael Huemer was very accurate. He was like spot on when he said that describing it functionally doesn't um denote necessarily denote that it is completely material. Like it doesn't prove materialism, and even then the position doesn't hold on that. So I don't think that necessarily matters. But then in addition to that, it also seems to ignore emergence, which I think is also um is potentially compatible with like a non-physical view of the mind, like emergent properties. And so even if you say that the mind is some immaterial thing that um the brain is almost like a receiver for, I don't think that necessarily means that there cannot be like emergent properties of the brain itself that allow for this, which would then also be consistent with things that we see in like the medical literature, as well as different research that we have seen in the past, how we are able to use electrical signals as well as forcibly pump nutrients into certain things to elicit similar responses. Like the Soviets did it to the head of a dog, and there are tapes of it. I'm not going to post it because it's really fucked. I don't have to take my word for it, or you could just disregard the example, but just putting that out there.
Well, as
Yeah,
a
but even then, like the idea of like, yeah, I'm not just gonna like strap a car battery to a crystal and say it's alive. Like, no. But I think that these things could potentially be emergent, even if you say that the mind is immaterial. Like I said, like the brain's ability to interact with it, you could even just say is like an emergent property. Um, so even when you're trying to say, well, we could pump these nutrients, it doesn't necessarily lead to the development of that. It's like that's fine, but the development of the fetus in from like a zygote into well, a fetus rather, um could then just be like an emergence thing. Like it doesn't necessarily like that. I
Mhm.
don't see stands like
Yeah,
based off of that.
so you can clarify me. Is your claim for the emergence? Are you claiming that like mental states or consciousness could emerge when the brain or the body grows bigger? So, like you were saying for the dog, that there's obviously a very close correlation between physical states and mental states, and you're just
No, so
claiming no.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
That's
it's
fine. You can
not. It's not
interrupt
like
me. I'm asking about your position, so you can
yeah,
clarify it if
yeah.
I got
So
something
sorry. I'm
wrong.
just trying to be polite. But now what I'm claiming is that the claim that you made in your ontological argument that um no form of pumping nutrients into this thing will result, like that alone doesn't result in the creation of like a mind, is even then, like I don't, my thing isn't even necessarily off of like the mind or sentience. It's not even necessarily what I apply personhood to anyways, depending on what you mean by like the mind and sentience. But then it seems as though like that just kind of does, the argument itself doesn't seem to stand, because it just doesn't account for like emergence and the and how these things are potentially emergent properties. So like I just don't see the argument as valid as a result of that. Um
All right, can you just go into what you mean by emergent properties and give some examples?
well, like properties that arise out of a or more complex properties that arise out of a simplistic union of more simple things. Like for example, the atom, or like not even, we can go even smaller. We could look at like the proton. Those are up quarks and down quarks, and it starts to exhibit things that are like properties that the individual components do themselves do not, or even then atoms, how the individual parts of like an atom, like a proton and a neutron, and the electron have different properties as opposed to the atom as a whole.
Okay, I understand. You're just saying one individual constituents are brought together. The whole has some extra property that's greater than what all the individuals' particulars or whatever constitute. Does that make sense? Would that be true? And then you're applying that to the fetus?
Well, I'm saying that with the ontological argument in particular, I'm saying that I don't see this as particularly valid because one of the premises itself seems to not account for emergent properties, and that seems to be one of the reasons for why you were saying like we should treat this, or maybe the fetus is it's going to bother me. The zygote is when it's technically like the two cells. I'm sure you know.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I get what you mean, but like I'm just like why I'm a little anal about it, but
yeah,
the zygote itself being like ontologically indistinct from like say the baby in that sense because you were saying that, but it ignores the idea that there are other properties potentially which could end up being the one that gives it personhood, being emergent,
yeah.
therefore at the start it's automatically like equal to the same, like equal, like
Okay. So for that I would for that there's two things. There'd be one, for the example you gave about the quark, a proton is purely physical. There's no type of way of how it feels to be a proton, or they don't have mental states, as far as we're aware. And for the second thing of your emergent properties thing, I would just like you to go in and explain what exactly, what change exactly from the zygote to birth would you expect there to be plausibly would you expect the fetus to go from a state of not having a soul to having a soul? So we can just use that as like a placeholder for what we mean. So
I'm not to say that you're intentionally doing this, but I just wouldn't even call it a soul or even engage with it if it is being called a soul, simply because that doesn't factor into my views whatsoever. And that term itself is just a little bit loaded. And I'm not going to sit here and say that you're doing it on purpose. Like, I think I get what you mean when you say a soul, but I just want to make that clear.
Some non-material property. That's what I mean by soul.
Well, again, I'm not convinced that it's necessarily like a non-material thing. But even then, if you want the mind being it in this case, but even if I wanted to say operate like give a version of my view which operates under that framework, the view wouldn't be saying that it gains a property in which it now has this immaterial thing. The mind itself would be like this immaterial thing, which is exists separate from the body, but you could potentially make all of the functional claims about like the emergence and like the modern science of the brain. You can make those work by stating that it is more or less almost like a receiver for the consciousness itself. And so at some point in the development, I'm sure you would agree that it goes from not having a nervous system at all to then having a nervous system and then a brain. Like that.
Yeah.
The science just shows that. And like I said, even if you think that the mind is physical, or not physical, sorry, I don't think that necessarily like into it, because it's like essentially
No, I see what you mean. I agree with that.
You're trying to sell me on like why I would need to protect like the building of a computer before it can boot up the software to load up, like we'll just pretend Alexa's like a fully sentient AI before it can load up Alexa.
Yeah, so I agree. I'm not claiming that the zygote has consciousness or sentience, because it has this like non-material property. And I agree with what you're saying for the brain. You can call the brain like the hard drive example you're giving, like as the brain grows, it allows consciousness to interact with the body, if that makes sense. So, and I'm assuming we're acting underneath the assumption that the brain does not constitute the mind. The mind is some different thing. So we don't have to go argue about metaphysics from what you were saying. So
I'm saying my personal view is that it is not, but my framework can still be applied there. So yeah.
I get it. You're just saying even if this is the case, then I agree with everything you said. I guess we'd have to go into the thing of you saying we're not justified in like waiting for the hardware to develop. So it would be like the physical properties. I would say that's wrong. Because of what I mean by personhood, and then we can go over and see which definition I guess is more consistent. So,
yeah, I guess my main thing is, like with the computer, like I don't see anything necessarily wrong with you putting in an order for a computer and then saying, okay, well, go ahead and you could just stop. I don't want it anymore, like because it's not fully made. Like it doesn't have that all of all of the core components, the physical properties necessary to like interface with even the hypothetical like immaterial things like that. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's essentially it. I
Oh
just
wait,
want
no,
to.
no. I just noticed something. There is something different. I'm guessing you're saying. Are you saying these immaterial properties don't emerge until the physical properties emerge?
No, 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 no. I'm saying that the physical thing lacks an ability to interface with it until it gains a emergent set of properties under a material or immaterial view of the mind.
Okay. Okay. No,
Yeah,
that's fine.
so yeah, that way you can that way like I said, I think Michael Humer was very accurate. He's saying this is a way that you can not deny medical science and still hold this like dualist view, regardless of which version. Like,
Okay. Yeah. So we can just go into that then.
yeah, I mean, I guess my view of personhood is just because of what I value and what I don't value. I don't necessarily see a reason to value the thing before it has the hardware necessary to like I don't see why I should value the computer before it's fully assembled. Like all of its hardware isn't even fully assembled. Like it's still the stuff still needs to be machined. It still needs to be fabricated. And I don't see a reason to value that. But once it is all of those parts are made and together and placed together inside of, the case, then at that point it's just like, all right, it may not have Alexa booted up onto it, but it is completely capable of running Alexa on it.
Yeah. So for this, I would just say you're putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. So what we value isn't some hardware in humans, right? So extending this to the real world or whatever, there are people born with deformities that are very, very dumb. So that would be like your Alexis is damaged. Let's say it can't boot up the software. So like people born into comas, people born crippled, people born with mental impairments. I would still say those people deserve to live. And then for the other, actually, you can just respond to that for now. But yeah, I would just say,
That might be that even if like I were to say that I do value like I think we kind of start running into primitive terms whenever we start saying things like a human experience. Even if I say I value a human experience, that doesn't necessarily apply to all all things that we would describe as human throughout all points in time. Because I mean, like, just descriptively, and I'm not using this as an argument, or like this isn't going to be like a focal point for something. You and I agree. Your spit has your DNA. Genetically speaking, that's the same as if I were to pluck your hair. It's your
yeah,
DNA, genetically speaking. And so like, or even say for example, your dead body, you just died. That's we don't necessarily value that. I think what a lot of people value is the wishes of the people who are close to that body, at least like and
no, no,
like the
I don't
property
agree with
rights and
that at
everything
all.
surrounding
No.
it. But okay, so you think that like the dead body has moral value too?
Oh yeah, of course. So the reason why necrophilia is immoral, so how you were saying it's because people would care or whatever, like people around them would care. So if it's the case that the only thing that makes a dead body have moral value, so preventing you from raping it, is just a case that people like it, then if you find someone who has no connections to other humans, like a loner, and they're dead, there is nothing immoral with you raping them, and that would seem to go against our intuition. So I would just say it is the case that the person, when they were alive, so it's kind of like a libertarian argument, but when they are alive, they would they would obviously not want their dead body being raped. So it's the same thing for like when people who are alive, and even if you don't predict you're going to go into the coma, everyone obviously wants to not be raped when they go into the coma. So it would be the same principle as that, where it's just the fact that the person in the future values their dead body. So
Oh yeah, no, no, no. So like, yeah, no, no. Like I said, like you and I just fundamentally value different things about like humans. The reason why we value other people. I value like the human experience. Someone who was born with like hydroencephaly, whose brain just does not function aside from like reactive, like reflexive actions, as well as just ongoing homeostasis. Like say someone who essentially is experiencing like brain death, someone like that, like who does not have any of the hardware to deploy a human experience, like comparable to what you and I are experiencing, no, I just do not value it whatsoever, which is why I don't value the dead body, which is why I say that I would potentially value someone, say, if someone owns it, or if someone is like extremely emotionally tied to it. That might be the only thing, but just because that other person, no, because it's no longer engaging in a human experience.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll just give a clear definition of what I mean by personhood. It would just be human essence, and yours would be human experience. Is that correct? Or other people having experiences of that entity?
No. I gave you my description of personhood, that I believe it is a spectrum which describes moral consideration, whether in a thing in question has it, and to what degree. I think that's what it assesses. It's a spectrum with which we can analyze things like that with. Yeah, that's what I
Okay,
think
so
it is.
there would be variance in the moral worth of people depending on their experience, or is that not the case? Because you said you wouldn't care about a person who is functionally brain dead, right?
Yeah. There's like cases in which there is no like experience going on there, like they're in the sense of, aside from like homeostasis and like homeopathic functions and like reflexive actions, because there are just some things like, even plants have that, and I don't think plants are necessarily like worthy of moral value just because they have reflexive actions like that.
Okay, that's fine. And I don't want to get into a meta ethics debate, so you just want to leave whoever's standard of personhood is in not coherence, but in symmetry with the judge. So if I give a more parsimonious and intuitive explanation of what I define as personhood, and the logical entailments of that definition seems to align more with the judge's like opposed intuition, then I would win the definition point. And then if it worked for you, you would win the definition point. Are you fine with that?
Well, again, I'm not, no, because that would be a shift from my original goalpost. My original goalpost that I'm still defending is that I can provide you a consistent, a valid and consistent system in which it is completely fine to. And like I said, I also don't need to justify like genocide, fucking anything like that. That's really what I'm here for, is to show that there is a completely justifiable way in which we can logically say, okay, it is fine to have this abortion. And I don't think we have to really
Okay, well,
fight many
so
points. And so
for
like I said, even the intuition thing, I think that we may share a lot of intuitions, but intuition doesn't necessarily make like a moral system bad. I don't think that's particularly strong justification that it's bad or worse.
yeah, so for that, I would just argue we would be on equal footing on that point, because my argument is going to be logically consistent. And then for the biting the bullet thing, I would disagree. I do think you're biting the bullet by saying there's nothing wrong with a dead person who has no friends or family or human connection to get raped. Like, there's nothing immoral about that. So those are the two main disagreements, where it's just like, if we're on equal footing, there's going to be an impasse in terms of judgment. So.
Could potentially. That is assuming that your position is entirely valid. I do believe I gave a very proper critique of the first argument, mainly being due to its structure. We can move on to the second one though, which was the point about
What about the structure did you say was... Also, I need to, before we move on, I also have to go into some points about personhood. You just explain why my definition for human essence is more palatable than your thing for the experience. So. But what about the structure of my argument was
well,
invalid?
Well, before we start jumping around a lot, sorry, you just threw my whole train of thought off. If you just want to go off about your reason why you think it's more palatable, I mean, I think that's, if anything, is just like kind of intuition pumping for the judges and for the crowd. If anything, I don't see that as like really necessary or really at all, because I don't think it does anything to counter it. If you wanted to talk about the usage of my definition and how it could potentially lead to conclusions which I don't necessarily like, then potentially, yeah, you might be able to catch me on something there, something that I'm not willing to bite the bullet on.
Okay, we can go more into that, but I already detailed out how that consistency thing wouldn't be sufficient unless one of us postulated some like meta ethics thing. So, like us appealing to the judge, like the whole point of us having a judge for this tournament is he's the arbiter of who wins in his opinion or whatever. So it's gonna come down to if we don't postulate some like meta ethical framework where one methodology is inconsistent with the laws of ethics, Oppo has to judge off his intuitions, or else just one of us having an inconsistent position, like logically inconsistent. So that's where the biting the bullet stuff would go into play.
I'm saying, like, the only bullets that I guess you would call biting the bullet are just like things that I just genuinely believe. I don't even feel like it's something like I have to bite this bullet. No, I just genuinely do not have any value for like the dead body. I think that a lot of people don't value the dead body because and this is just across the world. I mean, it's a bit difficult to talk about like percentages or anything like that, just because like limits with like polling data. But there are many places around the world in which they do things to dead bodies, which we would consider like desecrations. But for them over there, it's like completely honorable. Like, you could even look at in Zoroastrian tradition, you're supposed to let your body be picked at by buzzards, open air,
Well,
like that.
for
But then
my
you value-
view, my like libertarian view, it would be the case that the person wouldn't want this when they're alive. So what's it called? So for the buzzard thing, usually people in those demographics adhere to like whatever the religious or ethical standards are of that country. So if those people want to be picked at by buzzards when they die, there's nothing wrong with it. But in the case of rape, basically no one on earth wants to be raped after they're dead, even if it's the case that they don't know anyone. So
Sure, but even if I were to say adopt a portion of that framework where I'm saying, okay, we're going to value the wishes of the person, then at that point, it is not because they are say, well, this person was once engaging in a conscious experience. That's why I'm valuing it. It's just more or less like this is like property rights. This is that person's property, and an estate has some type of valued rights. And even then, I'm not sure that I necessarily need to say in order for this to work in my framework that it is because they just have some like just ontologically they were a human and a person at one point. I don't think I even need to necessarily say anything like that just for that, just to make a possible system like that. But regardless of that, the definition that I'm using, uh, um, I think it is perhaps one of the most useful because it gives us a framework, and the usage and the rather just the worldview that I'm proposing gives us a framework with which we can examine not just like how we would treat people, but like anything that is questioned, whether or not it has personhood. And then we can find varying degrees to which we do give things personhood as opposed to others. We can find some type of consistency there. I think the whole point about sorry, this isn't just like a conclusion. Let me not ramble too much, but yeah, at least as far as that goes, and even when you're talking about like appealing to him, I mean that's fine. You could say like, well, we need to appeal to him, but I'm just not interested in listening to like giving like little book reports just to intuition pump the judge, just try to sweet talk him. Like, if that's the case, I'll just like, I don't know, bro. I'll tell him I'm sending a bitch to his house, like with a wood, like.
well, you can say that, but they're like the alternative is just an impasse. So assuming all things are equal for both our positions, so they're both logically consistent, both have equal explanatory power, and neither of us postulate some metaphysical inference for which the laws of the world works, Oppo is going to have to either do an impasse or appeal to his intuitions. So that's just how the debate is going to go. And I don't think you're going to point out like a logical inconsistency with my position. So
no, I already did. That was the thing, and it seemed as though we had kind of moved past that onto other points, which are.
Was that the structure thing you were mentioning?
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I believe I pointed out a flaw with the actual structure of it, so I don't see that argument as valid. So the first one, I'm not really interested in rehashing that. If you just want to leave that up to him.
Well, I don't remember like any issue with the structure of it. Are you talking about the mental thing? It's just you talking about the hardware, like, oh, the Alexis isn't in the computer yet, I'm going to cancel my order. Is that what you're talking about for the structure?
Well, it's not just the structure, but also the content. Sorry, that was just bad phrasing on my end. But yeah, I already gave like a counter to that. I feel like I gave like I said. So I mean, even then, just saying we're going to be at an impasse, that does assume that both positions are equally consistent. And I believe that at least so far we have that. If we can just keep going down your other reasons, just simply because you also stated them, I just don't want them to go uncontested either. So that again,
okay, yeah,
like an avenue we have to go off of.
Yeah. If I don't go into the things I said in my opening statement, Oppo can just disregard them, and then that's fine. We can move off this point. I'll just say a couple things, and you're probably going to want to respond. But yeah, to get a clear overview from my position, it's The first premise is just that at conception there is a non-physical entity within the fetus, so something called a soul. Demi seems to agree with this.
I did not.
No, well, you just strawmanned it, right? No, steelmanned it, I mean. So
No, I did not. I did not.
you just didn't steelman it had
Hold on.
sentience.
I did not.
What do you mean you didn't?
That was not the exact claim that I gave. So the thing that I agreed to was I said that we can say a mind is immaterial. Never once agreed that it happens at conception whenever it's a zygote. Never said that whatsoever.
Oh, does this have to do with the emergent properties then?
That was going into it. Yes, I think it relies on several things. I think it's a very loaded argument. And that's what I brought up before.
Okay.
And I said, then also, even going under a framework like that, the argument doesn't necessarily follow, because then I can make a framework in which a mind is immaterial. However, none of those other claims are necessarily the case, because then we can functionally describe, like I said, the mind. If you wanted to say that the mind is the soul, which I like I said earlier, I believe that seems to be what you were talking about. If I'm incorrect, you can correct me, but it seems as though you're using that kind of interchangeably, which is fair. Most people do, just in general conversation. Like the heart, people say that too. Like, I don't see an issue with you saying it like that, but I did not agree that the zygote has that at conception.
Okay, so then I would just ask you to detail how, like, if it is not the case that has that at conception and you're using your gradient scale. For the gradient scale, I would agree that the sentience.
I think you cut out on my end.
Oh, okay. So I'm assuming you're referring to the gradient scale for emergence. So like over time, it's gonna have these properties. So for my position,
no. That gradient scale was for personhood and analyzing personhood. The emergent properties was saying that that because of this argument does not account for this. I see no I don't see it as sound.
Okay. No, yeah, I see now. Yeah. So for the quark example for the proton, those are physical states making some bigger physical state or whatever. And then for my ontological argument, there is an interaction problem between physical and mental states. So for my essence thing, it isn't clear at any point.
Like I said, I don't mean to like cut you off and be rude. Like I said, I don't want to be rude to you, but we did already go over this.
Okay.
I don't want to.
That's fine. I don't think you gave like a sufficient response to that. So then I'll just say one more thing, and if you think you also responded to that, then we can move off the point. Is that fine?
I'll just hear you out. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. So there's that, which never really explained it. And then the second thing was I brought up how it isn't clear how from a zygote to birth, there would be it would go from a state of non-material to material essence within the baby, because all the mother is doing is giving it nutrients, space, hormone adjustment, stuff like that. So I don't see how, on his view, he just kind of claimed it was the case, and he hasn't given any like reason why we should believe it is, but or claimed it could be the case or whatever. But yeah, that's about it.
Do you mind if I just like, in case Oppo forgot, just sum up what my thing was, since he just kind of went over the point again briefly? You mind if I just sum it up for him?
Yeah, you can sum it up. That's fine.
Okay, so my contention to it was that even going under a framework in which a mind is immaterial, just as you can assert that it has these like a soul, so to speak, at conception, I can give you a complete alternative which also does account for emergent properties, in which we have a model of reality which completely explains this. This is consistent. This is valid. And so even if you were to say, well, you haven't proved it, you've just said that, the same would apply to the opponent's argument, simply because it is just asserted as truth in the first premise whatsoever. No massive defense of that. And even going off of that own standard, I went and showed how I can give another standard which does not go against that, and also accounts for something that his argument didn't account for. Even the position that was used to what's the word? Elaborate and expand on that. Even that view doesn't even account for the same things that mine accounts for, giving it like more explanatory power. But I guess we can go over the second argument, which was that was like the saying that we're risking like a human holocaust, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my
But
my
you
issue
don't
with
need to go into that. If your framework is just sentience, I agree that the fetus doesn't have like sentience or whatever. It probably doesn't have it until like second or third trimester, like you're saying for the hardware. So that would just go back to our definitions of personhood. So you don't need to like go. You can talk about it, but I don't think you need to talk about it too much.
I mean, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and at least give what my counter would be. Even if you don't want to stand by it, just again, out of habit, it's a creature of habit when it comes to some of these things. When it comes to arguments like that, functionally, not just functionally, structurally speaking, it's essentially Pascal's wager, which is the idea that you should hedge your bets on the outcome with the that avoids this horrendously negative consequence, which the consequence in and now being analogous to say either an eternal hell or damnation, and then the consequence in the abortion thing being a human holocaust as a result of our rampant amounts of abortions. Um, which I do want to say, in my view, safe, legal, and rare because people fucking plan their things out. Use condoms. Don't be an idiot. That's my PSA for everybody. Um, for the love of God, use a fucking condom. but uh, but yeah, that's the issue that I have with it is even though it says yes, there's this potential outcome, it does nothing to establish how likely this outcome is because if the outcome like the negative outcome is hypothetically if it's say 99% the case that we are committing a human holocaust, then sure, but the argument doesn't establish probability whatsoever because it could also potentially be the case that it is a 99.9 followed by 59% chance that we are not committing a human holocaust. Um, yeah, if you and what was your third argument again? I think you didn't really expound on that one.
It's it kind of goes into the necrophilia thing we were talking about. So the argument just goes if it is the case that people do not want their future states to be affected, so like when it's the case that they're dead, and we agree with this moral supposition that it's immoral to rape people when they're dead, the same thing would happen for future states of the fetus or the zygote, right? So there's this shared thing that people don't want to die, so like children basically never kill themselves and stuff like that. So it would be this thing that even if you don't accept the fact of the essence or the non-material thing, the fact that this zygote would want to be a person, would want to be living and have conscious experience, would have to value its autonomy, like future autonomy, if that makes sense. So, in the same way, you have to value the future autonomy of the dead person.
Um, I guess like I have like issues with just like trying to talk about like the future and things like that, just because it's so incredibly like hard to discern, as well as the future, as well as even just predicting like the future mental states of like of people. Like I can't predict what I'm gonna want to eat for dinner tomorrow. Like, but even on a scale as small as that, can we predict that this person would like want to be alive for most of their life, even, or even that there wouldn't come a time in their life where they would just want to die? So I mean, even then, it's just like it doesn't really seem like it provides much. It just seems like a kind of intuition pump to try to put into the conversation to say like, okay, well, this person would probably want to be alive later. So don't you think it's kind of messed up that you're just robbing them of that option? Well, okay, well, that person might want to die later. That person could end up being born a Chinese baby girl during the one child policy. Oops. Like could have been
It's
born like it could have been born to like as an emperor's concubine. So like just the notion of well this person like probably would have wanted to, it's like maybe
so in the beginning of the debate, we established we're going off probability, and this thing that's non like living is demonstrably better than non-living is proof by the fact people choose to live constantly every day all the time except for people who are suicidal, which is a minority of the population. Even for that minority, it's typically because of physical circumstances or people around them and stuff like that, or early circumstances in childhood. So, like Golden Gate Bridge survivors who jumped off, all of them unanimously said that there was a very strong sense of "I want to live" as soon as they jumped off. and we would expect that to be true for other people who have committed suicide. And yeah, the thing just goes back to, it's not like some intuition problem. It's like most obvious fact ever that majority of people prefer to be alive than not be alive, especially children. Like there's basically unprecedented accounts for children being raised in normal environments and not having what's it called? Not in committing suicide. So that'd be my response. And I guess maybe extrapolate what you meant by the like Emperor of China one baby policy stuff. Just saying like bad life. Are you saying like it's a bad life or whatever?
Like, yeah, no, that's just like a fucking that specific example being brought up is partially just because of like the shock value. It's just more or less like a fuck. That's a horrible
Yeah.
situation to find
So
yourself.
I'll
There's
just
lots of significantly higher suicides there. However, I could agree that yeah, we could say more likely the case that this person would want to be alive, but again, again, even like mentioning like the future autonomy and then trying to draw the parallel with like the dead person, um, we're taking someone's past autonomy to make decisions about things that they had autonomy over of while they were alive in the case of like death. So I think that's a bit disanalogous. I don't think that does prove that even like in the most generous of scenarios, just because of that meaningful difference there. But
well, I don't see meaningful difference between past and future autonomy. I would just say that that's just you being arbitrary with temporality. So
Hmm?
I would just say you valuing past autonomy would just be some arbitrary thing that maybe you could attribute it to the fact that they had experience in the first place, so therefore their future like response for their autonomy is going to value more or something. Like I don't see how what I said is like incongruent with the past and the future. I don't see any disconnect. Like you just saying the past experience matters more than the like future autonomy or whatever just seems arbitrary. So.
I'm not sure if it necessarily is, but it's definitely not arbitrary in my view because it follows necessarily from that. Because if we value the human experience, and it seems as though functionally that seems to be what happens a lot of the times throughout human history, then we don't particularly um, we don't always take their wishes of like their dead body into case, or like say not just their dead body, but other things like say for example their estate. Even if you wanted to appeal to like the legal system, there are many cases in which we do not value everything that they say about their estate after their death. And the body technically, I think in certain cases can apply under that. Like it can be under the ownership of like the estate. But yeah, like or even cases where the body may be like claimed by the government or something like that. Like we don't necessarily um like just value that in the same way. But yeah, like I said, the I don't think it's arbitrary. I think it follows because, like I said, it's the human experience that's what the weight is being placed on, which is why, like, say, someone who is experiencing complete brain death, I don't think most people would even like no chance of waking up. I think most people necessarily say it's wrong to pull the plug. You yourself may, it's fine, but that's not what I'm speaking to. Like
Okay.
even then, that's just still using like the what most people would probably agree with, simply because there's nothing going on up there, no chance of coming back, no chance of awakening.
Okay. That's fine. Then I'll just I guess conclude, and I'll just do one more point, just going into depth as to why I think your position is unpalatable for most people. For
Well,
your
if you could just do the point first and then conclude, then we can just wrap everything nicely like that.
okay, I mean, I don't really care for like saying conclusions, so we can just wrap everything up nicely then.
Okay. Well, you have one more point though.
Yeah, it's just something I brought up before, but it'll. I guess I won't be making any new points. It'll just be like a reductio ad absurdum, where I take your thing to its logical conclusion, and I take my thing to its logical conclusion, and then the other thing about us appealing to Oppo's intuition on the matter. So, um, or well, you think I had some inconsistencies. You wouldn't be appealing to his intuition, but I don't think there was any inconsistency with my argument. But yeah, that's fine. So you just want to conclude then?
I mean, like, yeah, if you just want to conclude, then I mean, yeah. But like I said, if you have a point, then I'm all ears.
Well, the point is just like deriving um, the like logical conclusions from our definitions of personhood. So
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, if this is, this seems like it's something new. So if you just have something you want to add on to the debate, we could do that before we just like,
Okay,
finish
okay,
things
yeah.
up.
So I would just say everything with the human essence has a non-zero value for moral worth. And this thing isn't a gradient, so a baby doesn't have less moral worth than an elderly person because the baby has had less experience than the elderly person, or knows less things, or knows less people. So that's just a very common one where all people have this innate non-zero value to life, regardless of their experience. It's just in so fact as they are human and have human essence, and then that would lead to like I don't really know any bullet I could bite on this position. Really, it would just be like everyone's valuable no matter who they are, insofar as they don't violate the non-aggression principle for like libertarian policy. So if someone's trying to kill you, you are justified in defending yourself, even if it means killing them because of the non-aggression principle, which I'm pretty sure Demi agrees with. So that's like my position for that. And then his position would lead to a bunch of like he doesn't think it's biting the bullet conclusions, but it definitely is. Like raping dead people is permissible if those dead people don't have friends. Killing people who uh, have like like basically are brain dead is perfectly permissible insofar as no one cares about them. He also said there's a gradient of like uh, worth. So
You want to correct? I did say that the what's it called? The fucking the whole brain death thing. It's more or less like, yeah, you could pull the plug, not because no one likes him. It's because there's just no experience happening. It's a vegetable. That was my reason. I just wanted to nitpick that. But
well, I guess I should add one thing for the vegetable thing. Um, So I guess we might actually kind of agree on that one. I would still say it's moral to keep that person alive, but insofar as you're born into the world, no one owes you anything. So there are going to be resources expended caring for this person. So if he doesn't have anyone like parents, fathers, people, I wouldn't say based on the libertarian like ethics thing, it's we ought to like steal money from people like the government or something, steal money from people to keep these people alive or whatever. But so I guess on that front we would be fine because you would also be saying like pulling the plug is and no one wants them alive, right? So
I would also say for the gradient scale, it goes all the way from you are not going to be killed at my leisure and my convenience to you can vote in my elections type of shit. Like I would be okay with you running for public office type of shit. Like to full equality. And I think that that is a level of moral consideration that we do change between people, even just like functionally in the world. Like we don't allow anyone under the age of 35 to vote, or not to vote, sorry, to hold presidential office. We don't allow people under the age of 18 to vote. We don't allow them to do all of these other things which are considered just freedoms of people. We honor their ability to make consent and make decisions on these things, but it seems as though only after a certain point. So even then, like I don't think that the idea that there's a gradient is too extreme as far as society goes. I just think the a lot of people haven't thought about it to its conclusions as to what it would end up meaning, and so for it feels extreme. And at least when I said biting the bullet, these aren't things where it's just like, God, I really don't want to say this. It's just like, no, I just generally kind of think this. You know what I mean? So it's not like I feel like I don't feel like I'm like forcing myself to sit here and say, well, I guess I have to be okay with this thing. More or less like, yeah, don't really care about it anyways. Um, but then
yeah,
another thing that I have a question of is when you say that you can kill someone who violates like the non-aggression principle, would you say that then at that point their value is like is below like it was like zero rather? Like for violation of like
uh,
if I try to stab you. Like
I'm not sure exactly if it would be zero. I would still say people dying in general would be bad, but you have you could say like a moral obligation to defend yourself. So um, yeah,
obligation to defend yourself? You think you necessarily do? I mean, like, what if?
well, like you could call it like an imperative. I guess obligation wouldn't be the best thing, but yeah,
So
like
under
an
your view,
imperative.
if like say under your view, say I attacked you, but like, and I'm violating the non-aggression principle for sure. You didn't attack me. You didn't even say anything to me. I just saw you let the intrusive thoughts win. But then in your mind, you're just like, I'm kind of okay with this. You don't express it. It's
Hmm?
just in your head. You're just like, yeah, I'm gonna let it happen.
Well, then that wouldn't be violating the non-aggression principle, because non-aggression principle is saying you're doing something the other person wouldn't want. So if the other person is indifferent to you attacking them, then it wouldn't matter.
Non-aggression principle just means I'm not going to attack you until you attack me. Like, it's really what it is. Like, you're just not, or maybe not even non-aggression principle. Like I said, the bare minimum for personhood that I grant is you are not going to get killed at my convenience. Like, I guess you can say that it functions a lot similarly, but that's the hard claim I'd stick to. Like a fetus, once it hits a certain point, which I can't remember if it's first trimester or second trimester, but right around like 20 weeks, maybe just a tiny bit before, that's when it's like, yeah, you're just not getting killed at my convenience.
Okay, there was something you were saying, but it eluded me. You know, when you're responding to my thing about like I forgot what it was. It was about the life support thing or something about people we don't care about. Oh yeah, the voting thing. Yeah, that voting thing is completely just analogous to morality. So all the things you mentioned have to do with intelligence. So voting, you have to understand certain facts about the world and things around you to vote. That's like the implication. Driving, taking in substances, so like drinking, smoking. These things have like greater effects when you're younger. That has nothing to do with like morality. Like I don't even know why you brought that up. It's just completely dissymmetrical towards value of life. So like unless your view is that babies, like I said in the beginning for my thing for your parsimonies, like babies are worth less than grandpas or people more about other people. So
well, like I said, yes, that would be the case. Yeah. Yeah. There's still I mean, well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, yeah. Because I do think that we do place different moral values, and so I don't think it's disanalogous at all, because the thing that I'm mentioning is it's not about intelligence. It is more or less like saying that we don't, or even if you, regardless of intelligence, actually, regardless of any trait that is there, the fact of the matter remains that we do value the input and honor that, i.e., give that consideration. Because I would, even under my view, I would value consent, but like I would value consent of like things that have personhood to a particular degree, and so this, I think, again, I'm saying that it functionally describes the world. Like I can functionally describe like why I do this, and even go along with these norms. Like for example, why I wouldn't allow a child to vote. Um, Not even necessarily because of like say an intelligence thing, because we can have children, and we have seen them, who have beyond genius level, like super genius level IQs, but we still don't let them vote. We still don't let them run for public office. We still don't let them own land and things of that nature. And so and we don't honor their wishes in that sense. However, we do extend that consideration to things that are completely equal. Like with you and I honor your wishes if, say, for example, like if this wasn't a Discord debate, there was no pageantry behind any of this conversation. You just midway through the conversation said, you know what, Demi, I don't like talking to you. I don't like the sound of your voice. You know what? Fair, fine. I'm not entitled to your time. I honor that. It was that is a level of moral consideration. So yeah, no, I don't think it's disanalogous at all. I think what I'm doing is I'm showing that there are even instances which in which we do not value someone's wishes, and we don't give them that moral consideration, because I think that is also the highest level of personhood. Is you are given complete autonomy. You can vote in my elections.
yeah, so I would just say that for your thing, how it explains some stuff, and it's like toolbox. You're just using the wrong toolbox. So you're just using a wrench to try and fix. I don't, or I guess it would be a tool. So you're using like a dishwasher, and you're you're using it to wash your car. So the fields are just completely separate. Like ethics and the stuff you're talking about are not symmetrical fields. So I understand it goes back to your thing about the uh, experiencing, like, oh, our society values this thing, but society doesn't actually say you're allowed to vote at 18 because we morally value you more. We allow you to vote at 18 because when you're younger, like there's going to be obviously some vagueness, but when you're younger, like most 5-year-olds believe in Santa. So we wouldn't want America being run by an idiocracy. And then for the other thing you said about like association of speech, that just goes back to my thing with the non-aggression principle. So if someone doesn't want to talk to you, insofar as it's not their human right for you to talk to them, it's perfectly permissible for you to choose who to associate with. So that goes back to the umbilical cord thing where like no one owes you anything. So, but we can
Well,
yeah,
hold
we
on.
can.
Well, no, there's something very salient there that I think you brought up that I think needs to be addressed is the idea that I'm like making some type of category error here. I'm not quite sure I see this as a category error when you yourself, I'm even going off of like the same, I guess for lack of a better term,
Well, I'm
like
not saying it's
the end result is,
internally.
hold on, wait, hold on.
Okay.
'Cause there are a few things that you were saying, like whenever I was bringing up, say for example, why we don't value these things. Say if we looked into sorry, like judicial decisions, as well as say we looked at the different ratification, like the different times that we came together for ratification of like certain laws and principles or like amendments and things like that. um a lot of they can give many different reasons, and it can sit here and still relate to the intelligence of that. However, I don't think that necessarily changes the fact that what I was saying, and I guess I should be more clear with this, is that um whether or not I honor your wishes, I think is very much a moral thing. Like because for example, someone who is completely equal to you, even under your view, you would honor their wishes, of course. Even if you and I disagree as to what people are completely equal to you or I, we would still agree that anyone who is equal to me, we honor their wishes. With of course the obvious exceptions of like violating like non-aggression principle, things like that, like violating someone else's like consent, things like that. Like we don't allow like fucking rape. We don't think that
So
rape is good or like things like that. So I'm still not seeing like how this is like some type of category error. I think I'm still speaking to moral things. I think that is still a moral issue as to whether or not like these things are like we take their word into consideration. We honor their wishes. It's very much
so are you
all about
taking
like
like
consent-based ethics.
yes? Are you taking the thing about taking their wishes into account to be like being nice to someone? So if let's say your pronouns were he, him, and I called you she, you'd be like, oh, I prefer if you called me he. And if I didn't act and called you he, would that be immoral in your view? Because your wish is for me to call you he.
Oh, when I say wishes, I don't mean like every woman desire.
Okay, just
And
clarify
usually
that
when
then.
I'm speaking to that is like I'm speaking to like things that yeah, no, it's not like every single like you should just wait on me hand and foot because it's my desire. Um, no, no, no. But like say if I were to say I wish to call myself a helicopter, you gonna honor that based off of your worldview? Like this is a genuine question. If I Demi want to go around and say I'm a helicopter, even just a pronoun thing, I am a helicopter. Are you okay with that?
Like, your
Gonna
name
be
is
immoral?
helicopter, or you're
No,
actually a
I just, I
helicopter.
just, I just say I'm a helicopter. That is it. No further elaboration. That's fine. Like I'm not asking you to call me it. I'm not asking you to do that. Like, and I just say I want to call myself helicopter.
So
Is it
so on that
immoral
on
for you?
that
Is it
and
immoral
that
for you to allow me to?
no, it's not immoral, but on that worldview, you can. So people are entitled to believe what they want to believe, right? So it'd be perfectly fine if you're not asking me, if you're not compelling me to do something or anyone else to do anything, and you just believe Demi a helicopter, like just some random proposition in your head. That's perfectly fine. But the thing you were bringing up, which just seems like a backtrack, is that you were saying that these things about like voting rights are wishes people have. So like maybe a 13-year-old has a wish to vote in the country. And I guess for voting, I would say like I'm an anarchist, so it doesn't really matter. But for that thing, it would be the fact that when you vote, the
Well, it
things
could,
you
it could, it
want,
doesn't
the
have to be
thing.
voting. Hold on, I just want to say I'm not married to the voting thing. I just use that as an example to help illustrate like the differences between like what level of personhood do I grant something. Like I grant my dog the bare minimum of personhood at least because I believe I don't have the right to just kill it at my own convenience. But that being said, it has no say in how the household is run whatsoever. I don't honor its wishes in that sense. It has no say in like whether or not like it gets its water bowl filled up every day. It's gonna get water bowl filled up. You see what I mean?
Wait, are you saying so you'd be perfectly justified in starving your dog to death? Is that what you're saying? Because of the water bowl thing,
No,
like if it wants
no,
food, you
hold
don't
on,
have to
no,
give
no.
it
I said
food.
like whether or not it does. Well, no, I'm saying it is going to get filled up whether or not it wants it to or not. Like I don't think that I have uh like just
Well,
some right to kill it, like
well,
or starve
animals
it.
don't have wants. They just have some primal instinct they act on. Like they don't have free will or introspective thoughts, like a want. Like they might have some like primal want, I guess, like they want you to throw the ball or they want to drink water, but they aren't going to be like reflective and ask you like, "Oh, Demi, give me water." So I don't see what this has to do with anything.
I think that you're entirely missing the point and just not engaging with the analogy, because even if like I don't even know what that means to say like it doesn't have a one, it just has a primal one. I don't even know what that means. That just sounds like a bit of nothing. With all due respect, it just sounds
Oh
like a
yeah,
flat.
I guess it does have wants. I should have just rephrased it and been like, it doesn't have the ability to reflect and be like, I want this. So it doesn't have reflection, self reflection.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe not. Even again, the dog is not the perfect example. You could even say, for example, like a child. I don't care if the child says, "Well, Daddy, I don't want to drink water." Well, sorry, little guy, you're getting a glass of water. You got to drink it. But then in a case like that,
For
example, like,
that.
that's the point that I'm saying is that, say, for example, we already have sliding scales of like, because I do believe that, say, respecting someone's wishes and, say, again, when I'm saying this, I'm usually referring to like the specific example being brought in this case for like whether or not, like, say you came to my house and I'm filling myself up a glass of water. I'm not just gonna shove one in your face just because, like, and even if you say no, like, okay, well, you don't want one, I'm gonna give you that consideration, I'm gonna value your consent.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And so, like, we do have this differing level of consideration, at least under my view. That seems to be like how the world is functioning, even if the reason for it may not be expressly stated in that sense. I believe that whenever we look at, say, what people seem to value, or even just like what I value, which also seems to be for the most part what most people value is like consent of an individual, like a person. And I think that we don't just take the full consent of anyone, like regardless. Like I could sit here and say like, well, I wanna set off this nuke because I think it'll look pretty. Well, okay, that could fuck up a lot of other people. So no, we don't allow that. I mean, that's an extreme example to show like something we don't disagree with. It's not the point there. But then, for example, with like say a child, this child wants to go sniff paint. Well, no, we're not gonna let that happen. Like,
Okay,
you don't
so
want to regurgitate like.
yeah, so for that, there would be two factors of it. So one, the child technically doesn't own anything. It's all given to them by the parents. So like if they want to drink soda for dinner or they want to drink water, ultimately it's the parents' water and soda. They're the ones who worked and bought for it. So the child doesn't have property rights over the soda. And so it would be up to the parents to supply the child until they're able to get, like, because they chose to have the child, they have a moral obligation to support them, but they can still choose in which way to support the child. Because one, children are, like you said, dumber. So usually parents are going to be more intelligent on that front. And then two, I would also
Younger, less informed, sure.
Yeah, just less experience. Like they don't know as much about the world. So
then would you prefer if I said rainwater? Kid could just look up and open his mouth.
If the parent stopped the child from doing it.
No, I'm just saying, like, instead of a glass of water, could it be, for example, rainwater? You say, like, let's say you and I, we're in Mumbai, a place with really bad smog or something like that. All right, like really bad air pollution and acid rain issues. And so then we were to then, like, we were walking around, and then let's say you had your daughter with you, and then she's looking up, like, opening her mouth, trying to drink the rain.
Yeah, so I would say in that case, the parent would have a moral obligation to stop the child from doing it, because it just goes back to one of the earlier pretexts is like, if this is acting underneath the assumption that if this child was smarter, it obviously wouldn't be wanting to drink acid rain water from fucking Mumbai. So the parent has a moral obligation to do that. Then I would just say when the child, like the daughter, is like 18 and she goes back to Mumbai and tries to do that and tries to hurt herself or whatever, assuming she isn't mentally insane, then I would say it would be immoral for the parent to stop her from hurting herself. So I would just say, I agree obviously with the thing you're making about the people in society are treated differently based on their experience. I just don't agree that applies to people's idea of morality. And I was going to say a lot earlier that I obviously understand this is perfectly consistent within your worldview, but I was just bringing up that this whole thing has been kind of like pointless, since I just think
I'm just saying that even then it seems to accurately describe your worldview as well, at least my view of like how we give like a sliding scale of personhood. Even if we agree, and we probably do agree, that the bare minimum is like, we're not gonna kill this thing. We're not gonna kill this thing whatsoever. And I think that even when you speak to things like, I have a moral responsibility to stop someone from doing something, then at that point we are also still saying, okay, well, my wishes have a greater weight and a greater value to them than this other person's. Why? In your case, you're saying it's because the child is just more ignorant. They're not as wise. They don't know as much about the world. But I think that regardless, that still points towards a difference in moral consideration. I mean, we've kind of gone on circles about that, but I mean, just to reiterate the point.
Yeah. So I would say there obviously is going to be a lot of overlap between our positions, but there is very key distinctions. So there's just one very obviously, like, this is just super obvious. People value women and children way more than women. Is just, I guess I should say, babies way more than old people and middle-aged people and teenagers. Like, babies are the top of the hierarchy in terms of things people care about. Like, if all of us were shown pictures of dead people and there was a dead baby, a dead teenager, a dead adult, a dead grandpa, the strongest in like intuitive revulsion would be at the picture of the dead baby. So that's just very obviously the case. And this is true for, basically everyone. And I'm sure it's true for Oppo, that moral worth is not a gradient. If it is a gradient scale, it's definitely not. It's definitely not in support of like old people who have like a lot of experience. It's in support of the innocent and the unknowing, like women and children.
When you speak to things like moral responsibility towards these things, even the reason that you had given, the reasons you had given for having moral responsibility for these people is, it does take away from their agency and thus also their moral consideration. Because I'm sure you and I would agree, especially you as a libertarian, consent is one of our highest values. Like, definitely.
Mhm.
Especially even you as a Christian, I'm sure that you would, because I mean, like, Jesus didn't non-consensually make you a Christian. You chose it. You chose it. It was a choice. And so,
Yeah.
unless you're like a Calvinist, in which case you think, God just like orchestrated the universe so you would make that choice, and whatever. And so even then, but I think that does, even in the same way that, like, say, God, like, this is, I don't want to use this whole argument just because, like, I don't want to use an argument, but at least that's kind of how I view, like, you don't have to see this as an argument. I'm not going to frame it as one, but that's even how when I was a Christian, used to view like God's moral judgments being over ours. It's because, like, it's analogous to like a child. This is why, like, we honor God in this way, is because he is responsible to us. We have less moral worth and value, even though we're still have a lot of worth and value. Like the child, again, we recognize we have a responsibility because this thing could hurt itself due to its own ignorance. But the result of that is we end up taking away from the highest value that we could give to someone, is to honor their agency. Albeit within reasonable standards. No one's going to sit here and say, like, scrub my feet. Like, it's just, no one's going to sit here and go with that, of course. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I'm trying to point, because more or less, like, I'm just trying to, on this point in particular, is why I've been going in circles on this for so long, is I kind of want you to see that, like, you low-key kind of agree with me. You just describe things differently. Like, functionally speaking, a lot of what you're saying is just already what I'm going with. And it also does account for more things as well. The only thing is, like, the only thing that seems to be a disagreement is that you seem to value, like, just the aside from, like, the value of just, like, humans for the sake of them being humans. Other than that, like, a lot of what we value seems to be almost exactly the same. My thing is, I value the human experience for the sake, for the fact that it is a human experience, and I don't think that, whenever something doesn't have one, it necessarily has moral value. And even then, when I say, like, with a dead body case, like you said, it's such an extreme example, like a Jane Doe, in which there's, all family is dead, or something like that, like.
Well, the whole point of it's like a reductio ad absurdum, right? So it's just a thought experiment. Like, yeah, the chances of someone dying, like, with no human connection is low, but it does happen. So that's the whole point of detailing, like,
I wasn't saying that as a debunk. No. I was just saying, even then, that's like, with the extreme example, it's just like, I mean.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's not like that's like the most important things you should look at when assessing a methodology for anything. Just look at, what does this logically entail on the extremes, and is this congruent with our experiences or our beliefs? And if it's not, there needs to be some revision in the methodology. So Like there's a whole bunch of examples like that, and then there was some other stuff that I have such bad memory. You were saying some stuff earlier about God. Oh yeah, for the God thing, I don't think that.
That's not an argument. You don't need to respond to that as an argument. Oppo, do not consider that as an argument. That's
Okay.
I was just like just leveling with you when I was saying that. Like
Yeah. So the thing you're saying, like we overlap. Yeah, we do have overlap in a lot of cases, but the very big difference is that the consent thing you were talking about, the whole idea of consent is going to be different for adolescents because of the thing I was detailing earlier with the girl in Mumbai that's drinking acid water. Presumably, she wouldn't be drinking acid water. Like it's just very simple standard that people don't want to hurt themselves for no reason. So when you prevent your child from hurting yourself, that's not immoral, right? That's like the most loving thing you can do for them. So it's like you looking out for them because they can't look out for themselves. And it doesn't violate any consent laws because insofar as that child's aware, it isn't aware of all the variables, all the relevant variables for those things. So it wouldn't be violating their like consent.
well, my thing is that we do not give consideration for even just aside like to bring up the point that you made about the consent about saying even trying to say informed consent. You're right, they don't give they cannot give informed consent on many issues, which is why oftentimes we don't take their word into consideration, which again, even though we can still see instances in which someone's a fully grown adult, there may be instances in which someone just does not completely understand all of the ramifications of smoking, but we let them do it in that same vein. And so I'm saying that like even though we have this responsibility, we're still taking away some level of personhood, albeit not very much. Um
Well, is your
and that's
definition
what
of
I'm saying.
personhood just include like the ability to act, like you restricting their action, so that's a restriction on personhood?
Well, no, like I said, it's a sliding scale. The highest, the lowest being I will not kill you at my convenience. The highest being you can vote in my elections. You can lead my country. You could
Oh
command my
yeah.
military.
I get that. We can conclude then, because I think I already responded to that. For you're just making a category error, and you just don't think you are, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, if you, since you don't really like care to conclude, you just mind if I just give like a little summary, then and then Open can give his judgment.
I think I have to add one more thing because I didn't really. I guess you didn't go into it, but for
Sure.
my
Again,
position about well, this is just for me, just my position on human essence. I just believe it's the most parsimonious like thing for moral worth. So, um, and you haven't like, I guess you don't really care because you think there's some inconsistency, but you haven't like brought some biting the bullet thing or like defeater thing for me believing the human essence thing. Like I just think my thing gives us the best explanation of our intuitions regarding ethics, like the human essence thing. That would include it all. And I guess I haven't really defined it that well, but it's just the thing I was saying earlier with the
and I mean, like
consciousness.
I probably could have just asked you to expand on that a little bit, but that was a big reason why I didn't feel like hammering home on that point. It just felt like I don't even really get what that truly means. Like I get a lot of the claims that you made surrounding that one in particular, of course, but yeah, like
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I guess like
I was just thinking about it today. I never like debated abortion or thought about it, but the human essence thing just goes to this non-material thing. It's going to be like I guess it'd be like primitive, like very primitive language, but you like people still are humans even if they don't have experience, like comas and stuff like that. So it would be their humanness. So,
yeah. Okay,
yeah, I
yeah, no,
think you
that's why I
understand
brought up
it
the
though.
example to like someone in a coma has a chance to wake up. Sure, you could leave them.
Hmm.
Someone doesn't have a chance to wake up. It's just like you know, you had an experience at one point. It's fucking over at this point. Like there's just cessation of brain activity. The only thing you're doing is your heart is beating. Like
Yeah. I just think the experience, like if you have an experience thing, is a bad definition, or a bad starting point for morality, because of all the stuff we've talked about before. So yeah, we can just conclude.
yeah, if you want to go first, that's fine.
I'll just
If
say
you
this: I have to go study for a physics exam, so we should have really just went into meta ethics because this was a bit like kind of a big time sink. So this debate could have been like 20 minutes.
I mean, potentially, yeah. But
Yeah, you can conclude, and then Oppo is probably going to be like, I need to go watch the recording or something. So, okay.
For the judgment. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, I guess to sum up my debate, I believe I gave a God damn it, my controller died. But I believe I gave a consistent model in which we can examine the world, which I guess the biggest intuitive, at least what my opponent believed, the biggest intuitive issue with it is that it does allow for, again, like a Jane Doe, someone could theoretically just have their way with it, like they could chop it up, eat it, whatever, and that would potentially be okay. Not necessarily like a moral good, but it is something which is justifiable, um, in that sense. And I believe that I had given many counters and many reasons as to why this is not just intuitive, but also incredibly self-consistent, but then also encompasses things that my opponent's worldview doesn't encompass. But then in addition to that, it also gave several. I also believe that with the first argument, I gave issues as to why that one failed. Um, and it didn't really establish much. The second argument, which was that essentially that Pascal wagers one, he didn't really seem to defend it too hard. It's fine, but gave reasons as to why I believe that one didn't really stand. Didn't really go defend it either, which is okay. And then the third one, which was essentially going into points about again, like personhood, I believe I give a very good account for what my view of personhood is, how this functions, and then I gave reasons as to how it also maps onto reality. A lot of what my opponent seemed to be doing was just kind of giving, like, repeating his counter example, and I do believe that I didn't really show too many issues with necessarily his definition of personhood, but then went on to. But I do believe that I showed how even just the everyone has this specific value doesn't hold up. I believe I did show an inconsistency there because even with issues of the non-aggression principle, because there were multiple points, or sorry, not multiple points, but there were things that were brought up during that exchange which went uncontested and didn't really go like some of the counters and show just why he would be not even holding that himself, even showing how he himself already has like a bit of a sliding scale, like a gradient, so to speak. So I think that I showed why my worldview and my position has more explanatory power. It also, not only that, I believe that it feels pretty intuitive for most people because like it doesn't just like it doesn't rely off of like some callous disregard for human beings. It doesn't rely off of some just complete like, I don't give a fuck attitude. It doesn't rely on just saying well fuck people or anything like that. It even extends consideration to a lot of animals even. Um, I believe also again shows the overall consistency of it as well as the intuitiveness of it. You know, like fight like like Snowball over there and my cat like Fluffy. They're not gonna get treated poorly because I even this. They get treated just fine. I actually also believe that that's not really relevant to the debate, but yeah.
Okay. Uh, yeah, my conclusion is I just don't agree. People can give their own conclusions in the debate. I probably should have brought up something with animals because I think that's important, but yeah, we can just end it off here. Yay, GG. Nice debate, I guess.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that one definitely went on a little longer than I was expecting, but and then LC
Yeah.
pinged me saying I edged to your voice.